Okay, recording has been started. Excellent. Well, hello everyone. Welcome back. We had a little hiatus, but we're back with the Productivity Hub, where productivity habits unlock breakthroughs. And we are increasingly focused on our charter school community. So the intention this year is to interview a lot of leaders and players in the charter schools to see interesting things they're doing with AI and technology and education, either on the admin side or on the education delivery side. And today is really interesting, though, coming back because we're gonna look at things kind of high level, and we're gonna focus on kind of where we've been, where we are right now, and then looking into the future. So we'll get oriented around what's happening largely at these large infrastructure levels. So I'm excited about the expert that we have on here today, who's Carrie Goetz, and she's with Strategicom is her business. She's also the Amazon bestselling author of Jumpstart Your Career in Data Centers, featuring careers for women, trades, and vets in tech and data centers, and the educator's reference for data center education. It personifies over 40 years of global experience designing, running, and auditing data centers, IT departments, and intelligent buildings. So I think it's going to be a really interesting lens and angle to look at these topics through. And Carrie, welcome to the pod today. It's so great to have you.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. So as I mentioned, I thought it'd be particularly interesting to start with why this topic is important. So what I mean by why is like who one, I guess, who should be listening to this, and why is this so crucial now? And then we'll talk a little bit about the framework around where we've come from, where we are, and where you see that we're heading. So first off, high level, like why is this important now?
So I think for tech to work for everybody, we have to have everybody working for tech. And I think that a lot of people don't understand the depth and breadth of the jobs that are available in technology, especially in data centers and mission critical. So the idea is to just sort of bring awareness because, if you think about it, if tech's going to work for all of us, we all have to have input into what that tech looks like. We have to be involved in the companies. We can't have somebody pushing it down our throats, right? And so we have so many options now. I think this is a much more digital world. Our kids are digitally native, and being able to use that to supplement and fill in the blanks and increase learning opportunities. I think all of those are really, really crucial moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you. So let's kind of like paint the landscape. Where are we coming from? What's the current situation landscape on the ground as it looks like to you? And what do you see that we're stepping into? What's the future look like here? And future may be in the next 6 months, 12 months, and maybe over a decade. So there's lots of time scales there, but let's see like what's the trajectory we're on. So starting with where are we coming from and where are we now?
Well, I mean, I think kind of the elephant in the room these days is AI, right? We know that there's a lot of information out there. We know that 90% of the world's data was created, in the last few years. And really, of course, now a lot of that's digitization of really old data too. So,
Right.
but being able to farm that data in different ways, that's really what AI is, making assumptions based on the data that's in there and having somebody run those codes and programs. And if you think about that from a learning perspective, we'll just start with education. People learn in different ways. Not everybody learns the same way. Not everybody goes to college. Not everybody wants to go to college, right? So being able to use technology to help fill in those blanks, guide people along the way, get them started in the conversations, I think is all very important.
Yeah, exactly. So, where we're at right now, when you hear about kind of the AI wars, NVIDIA is now, I believe, the third most valuable company in the world. So it's the main one, the main picks and shovels business in this space that's providing the GPUs necessary for these large language models.
Yep.
And so, and then, and there's a question like Sam Altman is apparently looking to raise $7 trillion for us to bring chip manufacturing into the United States and not be solely reliant on Taiwan. These are some of the elements of the landscape that we kind of see are going on right now. Um, how do you see this playing out? Do you have some forecast in turn? Are those the big limiting factors right now in terms of being
Well,
able to have access to? Yeah.
yeah, parts and smarts are a limiting factor without a doubt. There's
Hmm.
also a huge problem that we have 300,000 open jobs in this industry right now that have to be filled by 2025.
Hmm.
So we don't have the people to do that. We definitely need a lot of the talent that is in other areas to come into the data center space and start working in the space, start working in coding, start working in AI. We need the chip manufacturing here because supply chain has really been a big hiccup. The other problem that we have is available power and making sure that we have enough power to run all these data centers all over the United States because you can't just stand up a source for power overnight. It doesn't quite work that way. It'd be nice if it did, but it doesn't work that way. So there's things that we can do to be more sustainable in the industry, and all of those are careers. All of those are opportunities that are on the table, right? And
Hmm.
I think as we evolve, I don't know that we're going to be able to move as fast with AI as we want to because there are going to be those issues. I think there's also going to be a lot of legal issues around AI, which brings in the legal community. What happens if you upload something into somebody's language model and have it rewrite it for you? Does your stuff become part of that language model? And the answer is yeah. If you write a book using AI, it's part of the public domain. What are we going to do with trade secrets? How are companies going to really police what goes on? And from a cybersecurity standpoint, you're going to be fighting AI now for cybersecurity. So while there's challenges there, every one of those challenges is such a unique, awesome, amazing opportunity. And I think if we really look at it from a talent standpoint of having people from all different backgrounds that learned all different ways, that's where the innovation is going to happen, right? If we educate everybody one single way and say, this is the way you solve this problem, that's the way they're always going to solve that problem. If you take students from different backgrounds and say, here's the problem, how would you solve it? That's a
Hmm.
very, very different outcome. And you're going to have people coming at it from different angles. And I think that's really what it's going to take for us to meet the goals that we want to technically from the United States and also, other countries that are coming in behind us. They're going to have the same issues.
Yeah, it was Krishnamurti's commentary on the problem with modern education, too much what to think, not enough how to think. So you
Exactly.
mentioned kind of four categories, right? So it's the people resource, these 300,000 jobs. It's the hardware, it's the power, and then it's the legal and policy.
Yep. I think those are going to be the four big ones this year.
So drilling in on the jobs. Now, one thing that we hear and are beginning to see, like real life, real examples of how it's affecting companies, the job market, and this transition is AI taking jobs. Now, why is it that these 300,000 jobs are not subject to being taken by AI? What's unique about these jobs that require people?
So first off, AI can only do certain things. People still have to program AI. People still
Mhm.
have to feed it language models. People still have to maintain the facilities and infrastructure that supports AI. And the biggest thing is we're going to have a whole new industry of critical thinkers that gut check AI
Mhm.
because AI is, not always accurate. And they all give you that disclaimer, but there's so many people that just think, well, it came out of a computer, so it's got to be right. But we all know that's not necessarily right, right? Um, so I think that all of those jobs are going to require people. There are some things probably that AI can do, some mundane tasks. Think what we do right now with machine learning, which is kind of the precursor. We know that there's certain things that if a server acts up, you reboot it, right? So we can program that interface and say, hey, when these errors hit, cycle the power, reboot the server. So those are the kind of things that I think they solve, but I don't think that really takes away a job. I think what that does is takes those people and gives them the time and the opportunity to be more strategic and think of other things and think of different things that they can do, within the facility, around their career, for the company they work for, self-education, teaching other people those same skills. So I think it sounds really bad when you think, hey, it's going to take everybody's job. But I think really what it does is just create immense opportunities.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the discussion pieces in this is okay, which jobs are the first to go and which are the last to go. There is some consensus that given enough time, and we don't know what that time scale is, that they can all go, right? Like that it's
Yeah, I don't
basically
buy that.
okay, so you think there are real limiters, like real limiters that that prevent it, because the way that I've seen this on a spectrum so far is, surprising in a sense, but became really clear right away when we started seeing these things emerge, was that actually like these creative aspects were the first ones to get highly disrupted. Writing, art, video,
True.
the rest of that. And then, and then you would say, okay, well, then the next ones that are likely to
But
uh
if you stop at that one, though, just stop
yeah,
at that one right there. So if we talk about this one, I can go have AI write all my articles for me. I could have AI write my books. If I put that under my name, I'm liable for whatever that is. If it's
that's right.
plagiarized, which we've seen happen so far, we know that plagiarism is a problem, right, with AI.
Right.
We've seen false things end up in court documents, right? There was legal briefs that somebody used AI to fill out legal briefs that turned out to be complete hogwash.
Hmm.
So even just stopping right there, the people that know how to do it, it's like we used to do computer systems where you run them in parallel. You run the new one with the old one to make sure that you're getting the desired results and the results that you need. So those jobs aren't going to go away for a while. The jobs that are going to go away are going to be what programmers code to be the least that they like to do about their jobs, probably. But
That's
from
right.
from a creative standpoint, I mean, if you today in the United States, if you write something or create something using AI, it's part of the public domain.
Hmm.
So you have no copyright protections. Companies aren't going to do that. No company is going to put their owner's manual out there from an AI engine. So think about that. Think about protecting all those trade secrets. I think there's been a lot because Hollywood got involved, and certainly being able to use somebody's likeness and deep fake way after they passed.
Right.
Those things are bad. And we definitely checks and balances on that because some of that some of that can be a little scary. But uh,
Yeah.
but I think it's going to take those people to be involved to make sure that those things don't happen, right?
So that's
So
what we
then
see as the
the
is the
next
first
one,
wave. Then it's
yeah,
basically it's the bottom of the stack goes first. Jobs shift more than go away. However, we have seen like wholesale jobs go away. We are also seeing that. Um, and and so then now these new jobs are emerging, which means it's important for people to have good paths to training, education, and also, as we mentioned at the beginning, like like how to think and how to problem solve, because these are not things that there's going to be a pre-written training for in many cases. This is a lot of, we need to know how to think and how to encounter these problems, how to deal with that. So that's the first category of jobs. Now, I think you had some more to say though about these 300,000 jobs and some initiatives and
yeah.
so on, right?
So
Yeah.
right, so we're starting some nationwide apprenticeships, which is really great. I think when I wrote the book, the first book, there were a lot of tons of open jobs at that time. A lot of the companies were still requiring 4-year degrees, and I wrote this article, it was actually for women in tech, but at the time only 30% of the adult population had a 4-year or better degree that was working age, right? And
Hmm.
17% of those were doctors and lawyers, which means all of these companies were trying to fill every job on the planet with degrees of 14% of the population. So that's never
Hmm.
going to happen. And then a lot of tech companies started dropping that, and more of the jobs came open. But outside of that, we have a huge, huge, huge trade presence. I mean, we owe the trades everything. If it weren't for the trades, nothing would be built. None of us would have a job.
Yeah.
But there's a huge component of that to data centers, right? All this AI, all these clouds, all this stuff lives in a physical facility, and they're being built as fast as people can build them. So, and we need the linesmen, and we need the HVAC folks, and the masons, and all of those. So all of those are on-ramps into the industry. Then, there's a whole
And
contingent of
those take a lot longer to get disrupted because not only
those take
do you need
people.
robotics, but you also need, unless you go to like a Chinese style where you're prefabbing everything and really shortening that, which is probably something that will happen and should happen. But like the point being that the more that it's a physical task and the more that it requires like unique movements depending on the situation, those are the jobs that are in my kind of framework around this, the ones that take the longest to get disrupted by AI.
Oh, sure. Well, and two, I mean, robotics can only do so much. At some point, the robot costs more than, 100 people, right? So,
Right.
and you have to have people that can react on the ground because ground conditions change, all of those things. So everything in the trades is certainly part of that. Then there's coding, network admin, hardware, software. You can do some replacements with robotics, but realistically, it takes people to do the DevOps and evaluate what it's going to do, evaluate the sustainability pieces, make sure that the data center floor stays balanced. All of those jobs are certainly out there. Some of those could be, like I said, there's a few that could be replaced by some robotic moves, but not necessarily speccing out new equipment, figuring out all the commissioning, decommissioning with all the other specialties in there. So all of those are never going to go away, I don't believe. We've got some robots that run backup arms, but somebody still has to move the tapes in and out of the robot. So,
Yeah.
those jobs are definitely going to stay. And I think being able to put a sustainability hat on top of that really changes it, right? Because, this is one of those areas where you would use AI as a tool to help you make better decisions about the hardware that you're going to run, when you run your cycles, when you run your software, where you run that instance. You might move it across country because it's cheaper because of high power costs at the time. I think all of those are things that are going to be those strategic conversations that are going to require a person that can do intent and understand consequences better than a machine, but where AI will help with some of those decisions. So if some of those mundane duties get thrown off, those people now can pick up a whole new ballywig of work. And then you also have sales, marketing, people that do the technical writing, because that's never going to change, right? Nobody's going to use AI. You might use it to get some ideas, but no company's going to put that out in the public domain. So again, back to that creative side. And then beyond operations and sustainability, all of that vendor supply chain support network that you're talking about, chip manufacturers, if we start building more hardware here in the US, and I fully expect that we will because of the supply chain problems that we've had, right? All
Yeah.
of those factory jobs, there's going to be lots of those building power components, building data center components, building those modular components. They still have to be shipped and driven where they go. So, we're a long ways out from those jobs being gone. And then, of course, the people that are writing the code and all that for the AI and the coders. One of the things that I think has been a little unfortunate is that we expose kids to coding first. And if
Mm-hmm.
they hate it, they just assume tech is not for them. And
Right.
there's a million other jobs that have nothing to do with coding, right? Running the fiber is a great one. We're putting miles and miles and miles of
Right.
fiber in the United States right now. I think California just put out a bid for 10 million miles of fiber. So all of those are people jobs. And they're great jobs. They're great paying jobs. It's a great way to see the world. I mean, I've got 4 million miles doing jobs all over the planet.
One general trend that I think we're seeing strengthen, I'm sure others in the school community will have way better data on this, so this is somewhat anecdotal from what I'm seeing, but it is hopeful. There's a lot of emphasis, especially in charter school environments, on CTE, and that allows you to then, from I don't know if it all goes all the way down to elementary, but certainly from like junior high and high school and up, to start to orient uh, much more clearly around a career path. So seeing like that trend continue would be good, supporting that trend. And again, looking into future careers in the broad range of technology that could be everything from coding on the and software to everything that's involved with hardware to all of the infrastructure, and then all of the associated trades that support that infrastructure.
And that's a pretty broad swath of opportunity, right?
That's a lot, yeah.
Just across the board. And like I said, and then plus sales and marketing and all that kind of stuff that hits all the others. So there's lots of opportunity there, I think, across the working on cell towers, right? Working on the edge data centers that are at the bottom of cell towers that are going to eventually be running autonomous vehicles because, they still have to drive when they get outside of city limits. So the jobs are going to be everywhere, quite literally everywhere.
Yeah, excellent. All right, well that kind of covers the jobs element and to some degree the hardware and infrastructure needs we spoke about. Not so much like the interruptions. I don't know if we can say how it's going to play out, these macro moves in terms of supply chains and the rest of that. A lot of that is perhaps outside
That's
of
going to
our
be
control and
interesting over
outside
the
of
next few
education.
years. Yeah.
But so we'll just kind of acknowledge that as a big variable on the table with how this unfolds. The third one was around power and power needs. How do you see that? Like, where are we right now? And what are some projections around directionally where we're headed with power?
So power is a
Energy
huge
needs.
concern. Power is probably one of the biggest concerns. We still grapple with a lot of stranded power in this industry, and I think that's going to be one area where we see a shift. I think we're going to see more and more companies start building out resilient models as opposed to redundant so that we don't have as much spoken for power that's not being used. And we're going to find better ways to orchestrate across those platforms.
Let's
As far as
make that distinction. I think I can get the idea between resilient and redundant. Resilient meaning, hey, we're just going to create power that's better and more reliable.
Oh, no. Sorry, my mistake. No.
Okay.
Resiliency. So there's two ways to make an application have a backup, right? So if we look at one server failing over to another server in the same data center, maybe but they're on different power legs, or we can have two power supplies and two power chains where the way that we're counting on that server being up is making sure the power doesn't go out or the cooling doesn't go out. That's redundant. Now, if we want to make it resilient, we say, okay, well, we know this code is smart enough to fail over to another server somewhere else. We don't care where else it is. And so now the power isn't quite as big a problem as long as we know that the servers are on those separate power chains, and so if power doesn't go, if power goes out, it won't knock them both out, right?
Yeah.
But that means that we can have code maybe that is in DC that's backed up in Oklahoma. And if DC goes down, Oklahoma automatically picks up and starts supplying whatever we need. So I think and we do that already, but we do it on top of redundancy. So if we have an application, for instance, that's on two servers, and both of those servers have two network connections, two power supplies, we now have an application that's backed up with four network connections, four power supplies. You see what I'm saying? Because it's resilient to that other server. So I think we're going to see some work around making it smarter so that we're not redundant and killing ourselves and repeating ourselves, right, at the same time. So that's part of the power. The other part of the power is that we just don't have enough. We have brownouts. We have, most of our power right now comes from natural gas. About 60% of the power in the United States comes from natural gas. We very easily could capture that carbon and sequester that and make it carbon neutral. We don't do enough of that because it's very expensive right now. And that's unfortunate because it's probably less expensive than building out solar farms and wind farms that take up mass amounts of land that you really can't do anything else with. So we do have an issue trying to get enough renewable power in this country. It's a problem with the load we have today, and those loads are expected to kind of double and triple. So the work around sustainability and how we're doing things better is absolutely incredible. Like there's a company I know in Europe that has modeled every server on the planet in this little I think it's of it at the back cave in my head, but they know exactly what kind of power they run. So they can take your IT load just by make and model, and they can come back and give you a list of servers that will run your load for less power than what you're using for your next refresh. So those are the kind of things, that, but it takes kind of intent and know-how to sort that power out. From a production side, I think if we don't really get a hold of better power options than just renewables, that we're going to have problems. We're definitely going to have problems. I mean, there's demand fees right now with power companies are super crazy. And you talk about data centers that are 25 megawatts, it gets crazy.
What do you see as the best options?
I think it's going to be a combination of a lot of things. I think that we're going to see more smaller data centers put in different areas to balance out some of the power load. And again, with that resilient component sitting on top. And certainly if you build a smaller facility, it's a little bit easier to handle that with renewables as a backup. But, we've got problems with power generation lines. There's a lot of renewables that aren't even online yet. So part of the way that companies are dealing with it is buying green credits, which is kind of funny money to be fair. But I think, we're going to have to work on better sources of energy. I think hydrogen might be a good possibility. I think more with hydroelectric where we can. But I definitely think that it's going to change the location of where some of these data centers go. So, outside of the normal data center alleys, there's going to be pockets of the United States where power becomes, just because it's available, a very prime location for a data center. And then they'll build a town around it and import a bunch of people, and it'll happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could change things.
Yeah, that'll be interesting as well. Let's see. The fourth was legal and policy. So what's your sense of the current legal and policy landscape? What are the big obstacles, roadblocks, or open questions? And how do you see these unfolding?
I think right now they're all wide open. If you asked any company's legal department right now what they're doing with AI, they're probably having a heart attack, because you have to protect your assets. You have to make sure that you're not violating anybody else's where you have to pay licensing fees. You also have to protect innocence and making sure that things happen where they need to happen. Make sure your trade secrets aren't, going up somewhere, because shadow IT is a huge problem, right? Everybody, I say everybody, a whole lot of people have used ChatGPT, Bard, and the other ones, and a whole lot of them have uploaded something and said, improve this or make this better, right? Now that becomes part of that large language model. So from a corporate perspective, how much of your secrets are sneaking up there? Where do those liabilities lie? And if what about generative AI when it generates something that is offensive or in poor taste? What happens legally there? Are you responsible because that AI is sitting in your data center? Are you responsible because you're the telco that passed it through? What about human trafficking and some of those things? AI can improve that and certainly help them make the problems like that easier. But who's responsible for that at the end of the day? And, is it going to touch everybody? When lawyers sue, they like to sue logos. So I think those legal ramifications are going to be very, very serious. I mean, Elon Musk filed a lawsuit the other day against OpenAI.
Yeah.
Because of some of these issues. What's going to happen with checks and balances? What's going to happen when people act on inaccurate information? Think of medical malpractice, which I think AI has great opportunity for medical, but what happens if it leads to something that's, so those are the things I think from a legal perspective, protecting yourself, protecting others, and figuring out where that's going to lie. I mean, don't you agree?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you think about the implications of all of this, as well as I would say momentum is a really important variable. And then you also can kind of imagine that you can actually keep this contained within a certain jurisdiction, but that's not going to be the case. India is likely to open source and train on all of this stuff, and then provide cheaper, better products that then the rest of the world wants. It's similar to what happened with music and the rest of that. So I think, people can try to hang on to what has been for a while. But clearly this disrupts medical, clearly this disrupts
A
legal,
lot.
and I think, it seems overall it's like probably a net positive for newcomers and hopefully for the consumer. And
Oh,
similarly, like a net negative to incumbents until they pivot and like that. And
but think
yeah,
of the opportunities available, right? We're building out these facilities to do all of this. We have a whole new opportunity for critical thinking, fact finding, sleuthing, forensics, right? All of those things. We have new opportunities for people to think in different ways. So, one of the problems we have right now, a college degree takes 4 years. There are very few college degrees for a data center. People come in through engineering or outside or somewhere else. But think about that. If we take somebody in the trades or a really good drafts person and team them with an engineer, and we can use AI to filter out, maybe they don't speak English that well, or maybe their grammar's not that great, or maybe they're neurodiverse and they have a hard time. So we can use that to
right.
fill in those spots and use the rest of that talent somewhere else. I think the opportunities out there are going to blow us away. I think in 20 years, we're not going to recognize society as it is today. And if you think about, the possibility for AI to do bad things, it also has the ability to do good things. If we can
Yeah.
keep like law enforcement ahead of things, medical, some of all the good that it could do for humanity. I just but I think, we have to make sure as humans that we have that intent and the gut check always. Um, you know,
Yeah, I'm weighted on the optimistic for sure, and also knowing that it's highly potent, it will be misused. So the hope is that that there are more beneficial uses than negative ones. I think the other complementary one, as I'm speaking like the day after Bitcoin hits new all-time highs again, is the crypto side where AI makes it easy to fake things and crypto makes it difficult again. So I'm not just talking about cryptocurrency, but I'm talking crypto as the
yeah,
entire
blockchain, the whole
field
thing. Yeah.
that would potentially be a counter. And the other thing it opens up in the realm of education that's quite interesting to me is less compartmentalization of, let's call it, just life, education, and work. So right now, those are like three domains that we kind of, in some weird way, try to imagine are separate. And we put people together in school because really on no other criteria other than that they're the same age, fundamentally. It's also not driven by like the individual saying, hey, I want to go to school or not. Now, a lot of these personalized learning charters are like a bridge out of that world into something different, that providing different educational structures and models, different ways that education is delivered, but they're curtailed a lot in terms of the experiments that can be run by, legacy structures and legacy ways of thinking of things. If I were really to like script it differently, I would probably like look at instead of there being macro credentials where you have to complete a class and you have to complete a set of those to complete a grade and a set of those to complete a certificate or a diploma, that really just kind of says that you passed certain things, in terms of you knew enough at the time, or you cheated in the right way or whatever to get the grade. So what's a really different way to do that would be micro credentialing, like micro tasks that where you actually have to prove capabilities. But as soon as you prove that, it's like an unlock. It's
So yeah,
immediately like a new NFT in your wallet. And so Now, as you connect to marketplaces of opportunities that likewise could be segmented by all the way down to the task level, and whether you're human or AI, but task, projects, jobs, and you could potentially remove a lot of the whole hiring process, the whole 9 to 5, the whole, did you have this degree or that degree? It's simply, do you have this capability to complete this task? If so, do it now, and then the funds are released.
That's the whole point of the National Apprenticeship Program, and it's such a great thing because you can take these careers, right? These jobs, and there's companies that will hire you on, so you learn on the job training. Then there's a online learning component. And once you get in the industry, that was part of the reason I wrote the book, is because once you start in any industry, you should always look around you. If you hate what you're doing, there's probably a job where your experience counts and it's applicable somewhere in there. But I also think that it doesn't matter how we learn, it matters that we learn. And so getting that basic introduction is such a great help, A, to get you started, and B, just to even find out if you want to be there, right?
Yeah.
Just to figure out what the heck it is to start with. And then for charter schools and homeschools, I wrote the educator's reference so that, people can understand what the takeaways are, what this means from an education standpoint. Here's some experiments to do in the classroom, kind of get the concepts going for, heating and cooling, those kind of things. And then same thing with the children's book, just to start at a young age. This is what the internet is. This is how it actually talks about how a kid sends a smile to the data center for her grandma to get, so her grandma will feel all better. And it talks about how it gets there and how the packets move. But that same kind of thing, these little micro concepts, if you introduce the subject that way where it kind of makes sense and people see the whole ecosystem, then to your point, we can figure out where we plug those people in. Maybe somebody says, hey, I love HVAC, but the whole tech world really seems cool to me. So now I can go and I can join an apprenticeship, become a data center HVAC tech. I can start working in data centers. Now I can start looking at all the jobs around me. And the other thing too, from a debt perspective, if you do it that way and decide you want a degree, most of these companies will pay for your degree.
Right.
So why would you not?
If it is a thing where it's like, yes, you really do need 4 years. In some cases, when you really get down to it, that 4 years might be reduced to 4 months or 4 weeks when you get down to the critical elements that the company's looking
applicable.
for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to see that directionally. It really makes a lot of sense. And I can also imagine like that if we could better index people, right? And you actually had in the indexing of all these micro credentials, obviously like digital, and now in any given moment, hey, we need people with X, Y, and Z resources, and we can basically bring them online. Well, it says they're available now. They have these. Great, like the door's open, and they just need to now basically claim the opportunity on their side, either remotely or on the actual location.
Gig work heaven.
So you could massively distribute resources of people if it weren't basically locked into these rigid structures of you have a job with one company with a salary. Like some cases that may still apply and be the best fit. That you had to then get a degree, that you had to do these elements, right? So as you begin to sort of unbundle these concepts, you can then, similar to the power needs, distribute where it's needed when it's needed.
Yeah. Well, and I think too that people learn differently, and we can't expect everybody to have the same takeaways. So I taught computer aided engineering in college, and I had students that couldn't read a ruler. I had students that you could see two sides, but they couldn't visualize the other one. So I put Play-Doh and Legos in the classroom, and the dean thought I was nuts. But sometimes it takes that, you have to build it out. But now you take that person that has to build it out manually, that's going to understand how it fits together, and the guy that draws it, and put the two of them together, and sometimes you get a much better outcome. So I think, part of this macro learning and people deciding where they want to work, not, you need to do this, or you need to do this. You need it. And to be fair, my generation is kind of responsible for a whole lot of that. But,
Wow.
you have to get a college degree. You have to do blah, blah, blah. But I think that there's so many opportunities out there, and we have people that want to work earlier, that need to work earlier. I mean, a certification is a life-changing event for a single mom. Why aren't we supporting more of that? And, the jobs are out there. We just have to get people in the right place. I have a whole list of resources out there for anybody that wants to use them. Feel free.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's, I think, one of my favorite topics is thinking about how that could be better. I can imagine these, even with a certificate, to say like, oh, there's a particular opportunity. And if you're already on certain learning, like if we started baseline with just figuring out who are people and what are they good at, what are they interested in, and then kind of gamified education in such a way like, well, here's your next easiest unlock around this area where it's gonna give you the most value, there's the most need for it. Well, also what's needed, right? So there's some Japanese word for this concept of the overlap of what you're good at, what you love, and what's needed.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
It's
I
like a
can't think of
K
it,
or
but
an
I know what
H
you're
or
about.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And so if you use that as a premise for organizing people, starting education at a very early level of figuring out like, hey, natively, like what calls out to you? What are you interested in? What are you inherently good at based on your different like sort of lines of intelligence and what's needed? And then gamify this whole thing to just incentivize unlocks. And then you imagine the sort of scrolling on social media and all the time that's put into these like largely net loss, activities could then be, if they're small enough, where in,
Micro learning
a
modules.
five
Yeah.
minute or a 30-minute window or whatever, you could have a next unlock. And it wasn't only, it was represented as it would be in a game as like an artifact or like an
Yeah.
unlock, but also gave you real world like opportunities and doors that opened.
Oh, that'd be
That
pretty
becomes
great.
really, really interesting. So
Yeah.
directionally, I like all of that. So we're about to wrap it here. So let's kind of focus on what are you working on now that people should know about, and like what are really important resources to clue people in, thinking about school admins, teachers, other people working in, vendors working in education, delivering products and opportunities to schools, curricula. Like what do you think are top resources to be on people's list here?
So I think any of the professional organizations, most of those have student outreach programs. I have a whole list of those on my website. Just go to carriegetz.com/resources. Oh, they have those. I dial in and talk to classrooms quite a bit.
Hmm.
I have this huge network of people all over the country that will be happy to come talk to classes. I think MOOCs are another great example of something people can use. It's massive
Yeah.
open online courses. If you don't know what
Uh-huh.
those are, there's lists of those. If you want to go learn, you can learn for free. But I think really just figuring out kind of where you want to be in tech, because it's so vast and it's so great, kind of understanding how the pieces and parts fit together, and then you can figure out where you want to go. And I've got some groups of women that I mentor as a group that are going through the book because they're changing careers and they want to do something different. So, think about that. If you have
Hmm.
people, if you're doing homeschooling, reach out to some of the homeschool groups and see if it's something that you want to take on. Go do a data center tour. Most of the
Hmm.
data centers will give you a tour of the facilities, that you have to work. If it's a student group, maybe it's a little bit smaller of a tour. But certainly they can do that and kind of figure out what's going on. And then I encourage you, if you live and breathe, stay up to date with what's going on in tech for your own sanity, to make sure that you can protect your children, make sure that you can have those safe spaces for them to learn and flourish, because the amount of information out there is absolutely astronomical. We just want to make sure that kids get to that safely.
Awesome. Fantastic conversation. Let's do it again. Uh,
Absolutely.
Carrie is giving away a signed copy of each of the three books that are there in your background there. And the way to win one of these is to leave a comment. This is on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, X. So any of those will apply. Leave a comment on whatever platform you're consuming this right now, and you'll have a crack at and if if your username is not doesn't include your actual name, we need to know who you are, or
Yeah, we need to know how to get to you.
You can email us directly here at R&B Communications, and let us know that you left that comment with that username if you don't want to post any other uh, personal information there, and we'll make sure that that we get that to you if that's you. All right, Carrie, thanks so much. It's been a blast. Let's hit it again
Absolutely.
soon.
It's been great. Thanks for having
All right,
me.
talk to you then.
All right, bye.